The Strain, Season 4, Episode 6, Tainted Love. Now this episode has 3 stories. We get the second half of Quinlan's backstory, which totally played out exactly as I expected. Then we have, of course, the present storyline, which is Quinlan and Fet, and then kind of continuing their adventure with this nuke, and of course their 2 allies. And then we have Zach's storyline for this episode. And I'm going to start with Zach's story because it was, all the stories are interesting, but with Zach's, his kind of shifted. Like, I think we all knew the conclusion to both the flashback for Quinlan's story, as well as what was going to happen between Zach and this girl. But the way it happened is what kind of surprised me, because I just always assumed that it would get to the point where they're either in a relationship or they're just about to be in a relationship, and then somehow she finds out, he's the one that set off the nuke, and that's what would kind of ruin their whole relationship and kind of bring him closer to the master, because it was clearly the plan the whole time. It was like, oh, let's give him basically this girl for him to fall in love with, and we know that we can manipulate it to where it doesn't work, and then we bring him even closer in. So how I thought that was going to play out was, like I said, they would get closer, and I thought that's what was happening, especially in this episode, because when he gives her the plums, she hugs him and says thanks. They have this pause where it looks like he's about to go in for the kiss, and then she kisses him on the cheek, and I was like, oh, okay. So she seems to have feelings for him, because she hugged him, and that they did that on purpose too, because in a normal situation, once you hug someone to give thanks, that's enough. Like, once you add the kiss, that would mean something to anyone if you already hugged them. Like, if the first thing you did was like thanks and you kissed them on the cheek, typically that means something too, because you can still just do the hug. But it was like, if that was the only thing she did, it would be like, okay, yeah, it's still a kiss, so of course most people would read into that like, you kissed me on the cheek. But after you hug someone, and then there's a pause, and then you go in for a kiss, even if it is on the cheek, you definitely send a certain message. So it was funny that they did it that way, because it was like, that was totally meant to be like, oh, she kissed him on the cheek. There's definitely more feelings there than just, maybe he's misreading, that little peck on the cheek. It was like, they already did the hug, and they had the pause, and then she went in for the kiss too. And I was like, okay, well, I was like in the same mindset as him, like, okay, so maybe she does actually have feelings for him, and it's starting to build up. I didn't think, even with that kiss, I didn't think it would all fall apart in this episode, because it's like he has these feelings, he goes to the master, and the master, they don't say this, but I have to assume the master knew that she had a boyfriend, and that was exactly why they did it that way. Because it's like, okay, well, let's find someone that he can fall for, who of course is unavailable and who won't ultimately be attracted to him. They might like him, but not in that, the same sense that he would like them. So he talks to the master, and, it's like, I've studied, human emotions for years and years. There's nothing I don't know about life and love. And so he's like, if you aren't sure about how she feels, go to her, go ask her. So he suits up and stuff. She doesn't end up coming to his room at the normal time. So he decides to go look for her, and he finds her. She's, giving out this plum slices to everybody, and then she gives one to her boyfriend, and they start making out. And as soon as that happened, I was like, yep, everybody's dead. I thought it was going to be sort of a scorched earth type of thing, and he was just like, kill everybody in the whole building. But ultimately, he waits for her to come to the apartment, and he's just sitting there. He's playing Killer Instinct. That's the game that was on the TV. I'm a super nerd, so I knew what he was playing. He was also using the Battletoads special character, but he's playing the game, and she's talking to him and stuff. And I love the way they did it, because he's like, did your boyfriend like it or something? And she looks, and you could hear him, like, the pause in the game made like a ding sound. It was like, ding. And he's like, yeah, I know about that. And it was just funny to me, because it made a sound effect when he paused it. So it was just, they have this moment where they're going back and forth, and he's upset, and he's, saying all this stuff, like, he's still this kid, because I believe that in the show he's still meant to be either 13 or 14 or something like that. And I thought they were going to bring this up, because when she first came in, I was like, I'm pretty sure she's a bit older than him, and it was somewhere early 20s, maybe late teens or something. And that's just how I felt when I was looking at her character. And I was like, I don't know, maybe that wasn't the case, because when they talk about her parents and how she was at home and how she saw her parents get killed and stuff, I was like, okay, well, maybe she's not as old as I was thinking she was. Of course she's not fully in her 20s or anything. The actress probably actually is, but the character herself is okay, maybe she's not even late teens like I was thinking, but she probably was somewhere close enough to be late teens. And they finally bring that up in the end when she's like, we're just friends and stuff, and it's like, you're kind of just a kid, because he is still, like 13 or 14. And I was like, I was wondering if they were ever going to bring that up, like their age difference, where she's like, late teens and stuff, and then now they're in this crazy apocalypse. It's very different. When you're younger, it's not just like, oh, I'm younger, so I'm like in a different grade of school and stuff like that anymore. It's like, it's super different because you are younger. You were younger before the chaos, and now after the chaos, you really don't have the same sort of realm of mind as someone who's older, who's gone through a little bit of stuff. Even if it's like a new experience, is a crazy apocalypse, there's still a huge difference there in like that age gap. So, and obviously in his case, it's insanely unique because he has like no issues whatsoever. So it was just the kind of going back and forth, and him saying like, I'm supposed to be your boyfriend. He was definitely saying like the kind of the stalker stuff where he's like the crazy stalker, wannabe boyfriend. That's kind of where it went like instantly. And it's like, I'm supposed to be your boyfriend, and it's like, I was nice to you, like I gave you stuff, and it was just like, yeah, he's still a kid. Like that's what he thought was it, because it's like the first girl he's really liked. And so she's like, all right, well, I'm out of here. And like he gets mad. Once he calls him a kid, he's like, I'm not a kid. He does the kid thing, and he like throws the spaghetti on the ground or whatever it was, but it just perfectly fits if it was spaghetti. And so it's just like, I'm not a kid, and he throws the food on the ground. She's like, I'm not picking that up. And he's like, you will if I say you will. And when he said that, that's when I thought they were going to do like the threatening thing with like his pet, and she comes in and threatens the girl. But she's like, no. And she's like, I don't think I can do this anymore. So she's leaving, and he tries to like grab her arm. And so she like pins him against the wall. I think it was like the second or third time he did it. And she's like, let go of me, you freak. And that's when, his little guardian comes around, and he doesn't stop her this time. Like she freaks out, and she's like, this isn't funny. She runs to the next elevator, and she's waiting for the elevator to come up. And she's like Zach, call her off. And then he just turns, and he's just like, whatever. Like his feelings were hurt, and he just let her die. And so he walks up the stairs a little bit, and she screams, and then you just see her get killed, and she's just in the background, and he's like covering his ears and stuff. And I was like, that's a pretty crazy sequence. Like he was hurt, and he let somebody die because of that. I mean, he nuked the city, so obviously one person, it shouldn't even be a shock to me. It should be nothing to me. It should be like whatever. But still, it's a crappy thing to do. So he ends up letting her die, and then the master comes along, and it's like, hey, comes along as Kelly again, like, you didn't hurt her. You actually gave her a way out. You allowed her to be free from desire and stuff like that, and now she'll never leave you again. You gave her the gift of being a part of the master's family, and now she'll never leave you or ever hurt you again. And it was just like, wow, the master is on like the ultimate manipulation mode. And so this was like, that moment where Zach is hugging Kelly, and he's like, I love you. And then they show him being hugged, and it's the master's hands, of course, because it's the master. But that was a cool way to do it, where it switches to the master's hands, and he like holds him a little tighter. And I was like, yep, it's working. Like it's just exactly what the master wanted. It was for Zach to get closer and closer. Like he chose to be with them already, where it was like, you could choose to either go off and be with the humans, or you could stay with me, and she'll be safe, and that sort of deal. So he already worked that little segment, and then it just went further, and it was basically the final point in this episode when he kills her, and then the master comes in as Kelly to say like, oh, you did the right thing, and try to make him feel better about the horrible choices that he's currently making. So it was like, all right, master's definitely moving forward with this plan, and Zach is just the kid that doesn't get it. It was just interesting. It was like, I actually liked the story and how it played out. Like I said, it was definitely surprising, because I didn't think they were going to kind of cut it and then go to like, boom, surprise boyfriend thing. I really thought she was going to find out, and I'm almost sad that they never had that moment where she officially found out that he was the one, that ended up killing her parents. He's the reason that her parents died, especially because they did the thing where it's like, he apologizes, and of course she's like, it's okay, it's not your fault. And they always do that in TV shows when it is the person's fault. But it was just like, okay, when is that going to happen? And ultimately it doesn't. He gets mad, and then she gets killed, and now it doesn't, she can never truly know the truth, because she's taken over by the master. She won't have, that the reasoning to actually understand that pain, but he's Zach is the one responsible. So very interesting way to kind of continue on that story. So I'm excited to see where they go next with that after he's kind of branched. That was like that breaking point a little bit where he had that attachment to humanity, and now it's gone again because his feelings were hurt, and then he screwed up. So he's still riding the line because he still felt bad, but the master's trying to use every moment of his humanity to be like, don't worry about that, and kind of just pluck that little bit of humanity and kind of toss it away and be like, no, you did a good thing there, even though of course it was horrible. So I like what they're doing there. I'm excited to see for real where that goes because it's the final season. So it's like, is the master going to try to take him over or what? Because he's still a kid, so I don't know, unless we're going to get like a crazy time skip, which they can't do because they can't like actually age the actor, like all the adult actors can still look the same, but he's still the child actor. He can't look like insanely different. He's not going to instantaneously have a growth spurt. So it's like they can't do like a huge 10-year, they aren't going to do anything like that where they do a giant time skip to him being a full-grown adult and the master trying to take him over. So I'm just curious where that's headed because they aren't going to have that time span. So I'm looking forward to what happens there. But of course we have our two other stories in this episode. Quinlan's flashback, like I said, it's simple to recap that. It was exactly what I thought. He found out the master was there, and that was pretty much it. He found out the master was there. He tries to take on the master. He hesitated, which was cool. I wasn't expecting that, but he hesitated because his life is tied to the master. And that was a cool little moment because that's something that's never, I don't think they've really brought that up before. I'm sure they did in like his official introduction, like if, they die, that's kind of it. Because I don't remember that ever coming up. Because when he said that in this episode, I was like, I don't remember that being a part of his story where he dies when the master dies. I didn't remember that. So I'm sure they said it just because that's a pretty important part of your origin to just leave that out and his like, surprise, that can happen. But that happens in stories all the time. Creators don't always know exactly what they're going to do. So that could be new information that we got, and it could just be something, that I don't remember from the last season. But, he's like, our lives are tied together. And so when he's about to kill the master, it's like, it's time for your life to end as well as mine. And then it's like, crap, if my life ends, I don't get to be with this woman that I love or her daughter who I truly care for. Like, they're like my family right now. And it's been, they mentioned that it had actually been a couple of months before the master kind of revealed himself. So Quinlan had been there, with the two of them for quite some time. They're playing he's playing hide and seek with the girl and everything. And so he hesitates in this moment, and that's when the master gets up and he, impales him with his own sword. And so it's like, you hesitated there. It's like, I guess you're not ready to die. It's like, could it be that woman and the child? And it's like, maybe it's time for your new family to meet your father. And he takes off, and the master leaves him there, and he's too weakened to kind of, get there in time. And by the time he finds them, they're both dead in the bed, or they're turned and they're just twitching, which is a great little scene too, where it's like they're just laying there and they aren't like slowly moving around him and being controlled, and he has to like kill them because they're attacking him. They're just in the bed and they have like little twitches every once in a while, and it's just like, man, that was an interesting little moment. Of course, he, after seeing them and realizing that he can't really have that life, he goes into the bathroom and he takes the cloth, puts it in the water, and then he wipes all the makeup off because that moment, that fraction of his life is officially dead. And so he goes back into the room and he decapitates them both to kind of end their suffering. And then that's it. And it's just like, that really sucked. That sucked for him. Yeah, that sucked for him. It was a great story, but I knew where it was headed, and it was just like, of course that sucked for him. And naturally, that's why he was so, focused on telling Fet, like, hey, we gotta leave Charlotte behind. Like, we have to leave her behind because, he was saying like she's a liability and stuff, but mostly it was because he sees that connection they have and he knows how the master can tear it apart. So it was very, it was predictable, but it was still entertaining to watch, because we don't have that with his characters. Like, the first time we've seen him truly have emotion has been like this season. In all honesty, like, he's making jokes and giving compliments and stuff like that. Like when Fet even says it at the end after Charlotte leaves. He says, like, she deserves better and she got to find someone better than me or something. And Quinlan gives him a compliment, and he's like, I give one every 100 years or so. And it was like, he's making jokes. Like, he's friends with these people. He has that emotion there, even though most of the time he does end up hiding it. But, it led to some really good stuff where they have this conversation about, Charlotte kind of doing her own thing. And ultimately, and they do this like in the beginning of the episode, Fet is like, he wants you to stay here, I want you to come with us, but ultimately it's your choice, and she decides to stay. You know, because that question came up, like the idea of kind of giving her that out, because it's kind of just like, well, we're just in it together, and now we're off to New York. But she was like, yeah, my plan really was always to just, we finish this and then I go back to my cottage and live off the land for as long as possible. And that's ultimately what ends up happening. So, they end up getting to the airport. Of course, they're able to get in because they have. I can never remember this dude's name. The army guy, I can never remember his name, but he of course has a connection with the guy who's at the airbase, who's just like sniping people left and right. So they make a deal, trade all their goods for a plane, lock and load everything up. And unfortunately, during this entire episode, pretty much, Icorst is coming after them. And Icorst has some good stuff in this episode. My favorite part of him was definitely him talking to the guy in the car, where they talk about like Native American history and tribes going against each other and stuff. And he's like, he was just talking down to this dude and was like, it's the tribes like, betraying each other and stuff. And the guy's like, I thought it was barbaric, it's his people. So it was like, I thought it was kind of horrible. And it was like, no, the tribes betrayed each other because they basically did exactly what you're doing, which is giving up the human species because it's more about self-preservation. And he's like, I didn't have a choice. I was like, of course you did. You could have chosen a warrior's death and stuff, but instead you chose the coward's way out and that sort of thing. It was just like, man, he's pissing this dude. He's pissing me off. But it was like, that self-preservation thing. And so of course he pisses the guy off, and he ends up giving them that warning with by turning the radio on and stuff. So ultimately he gets busted, and Icorst tells him to pull the car over, but of course he speeds up and he jumps out. And it was a good plan, but unfortunately it's the middle of winter, so like snow, you stop. Yeah, snow actually does slow you down. So it was actually really easy for Icorst to survive. It wasn't like he was barreling into a tree. It was like he hit the snow and then it was just like, okay, truck slowed down. And I was like, the dude took off, but he's dead because Icorst, of course, has super speed. And he's running and he's looking behind him, looks forward, Icorst is right there, and he picks him up and he just kills him off. And I was like, sucky way to go, but that's just how it is. So of course Icorst ends up traveling, in the truck. He gets to the airbase just as they're about to take off in the plane, and ultimately he gets stopped by the sniper rifle dude. Sadly he dies. I knew he was gonna, like, as soon as he shot out the tires, I was like, well, he is officially dead. He has shown that he's on their side and that he's even there. So Icorst, of course, gets on the truck and he uses the gun, and he just lights up the tower, and of course the guy ends up getting killed. And so then he turns the gun on the airplane to try to shoot it up, and that's when we see that Charlotte actually kind of came back. I think she like shot him in the chest, and then she like shot him in the head to like temporarily kill him, or no, she didn't even shoot him in the head. She like shot him in the chest twice, and it just knocked him down. So he was mad, and he swore technically, but because it was not in English, he was allowed to do that. Well, actually, yeah, they can't say shit because it's FX. I think because when it premieres, it's late night, so they can say shit on there, I believe. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But like she ultimately ends up saving them, and Fet mentions that to Quinlan. It's like, I got a pretty good guess as to what just happened there, and it's like, she proved you wrong. She saved their lives again, and then Quinlan says like, no, you saved her life as well as ours by actually letting her go, like giving that option to not be like, hey, you need to come with me, like. Giving her that choice to literally live her own life and not just be like, hey, I like you and you like me, we should do this. It was like, no, you opened up that dialogue to be like, what do you want? Because she didn't want what Fet wanted. She didn't want to go where he wanted to go, and he didn't try to force her because of the feelings they have for each other. And so it was a cool little moment. She ends up saving their lives as they take off. They make it seem like she's totally fine, but in reality, I would assume that she's supposed to be dead because after she shot Icorst the first time, he looked right at her, and then she shot again. I mean, maybe he doesn't know exactly where she was, but it was like, he's got super speed, even though he got shot like in the stomach and the chest. That's nothing to him. He can get up and still run at super speeds, and he'd find her and kill her because they're on the airbase still. And I'm like, they end it where she kind of walks off, and that's the end of the episode. Like, she saved them, and now she's off to live her life. I'm like, it would take him like 5 seconds to run diagonally from the direction he was shot and then kill her. And that's all I was thinking, was like, she should be dead, but they made it seem like, she got the happy ending and she gets to live. So I hope that's the case. I hope the next episode doesn't pick up and it's like, surprise, here's some reality because he's got super speed. It makes more sense to me because, like I said, he looked in the direction he was shot. He knew where the shot came from when he was first hit. So it's like he should be able to just hop up and run right over there and kill her. But maybe they're doing it where she does live because it's a happier ending than most of the stuff that happens in the Strain. So I wouldn't hate that. But realistically, I was like, she should be dead. She should be done for. But definitely a good episode. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see the next one. We still didn't get to see what's going on with Gus. We of course don't get F. We don't get Satrakian and Dutch and everything they're doing. But we have two of the characters heading back to New York. So they're going to New York. They're most likely going to run into Dutch and Satrakian. However, their escape thing is going right now. And then we still have F and Alex. And they're doing their thing. So like I said, I'm still curious where that's going to head to. But the characters are getting closer together now. We officially have a couple of the characters moving back to New York. And we'll see what happens, with F's storyline. Because I believe they are still in Philadelphia technically. So it's just how that's going to play out when they're eventually going to get back to New York. But the characters are moving closer together. They've got the Duke now, so I'm looking forward to how things play out in this next episode. But of course, we'll love to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know what you guys thought about Quinlan's story in this episode. Because, like I said, even in my last review, I was like, we know where this is headed. But I still enjoyed it. I knowing exactly what was going to take place, knowing that this woman was going to die, knowing that her daughter was going to be killed by the Master as well. I still enjoyed everything we got to see because it was that one moment. Even before that, he only had one other person, and that was during his origin story when the Master trapped them in that cave, and he had to kill basically his mother in order to survive, to have enough strength to fight his way out, and that was centuries beforehand. That was the last time he truly had any emotional character that he was attached to, any person that he was really attached to. So this is the second time, and now he's reliving that, seeing it from another perspective, and it's I don't want this to happen to the two of them. And I have a friend that, even though he acts like he doesn't care, he cares about him. It's I don't want to have a friend that loses someone, and I don't want someone else to be killed by the Master that could easily live, that could escape this crazy situation. So I really liked the story, even though, like I said, I think we all knew exactly where it was headed, but I still really enjoyed it just because of that depth that it gave to a character that's typically just stonewall emotionless. So I really enjoyed that for it, but would love to know what you guys thought about this flashback, or the second part of the flashback story. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.